Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Alumni Chats, a weekly podcast featuring alumni from the Department of Broadcasting and Journalism here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the host of the podcast, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Jake Peterson from the class of 2005. Jake, so glad to see you.
Hey, Buzz. Yeah, good to see you. You know, we both look the same from back in that generation. So it's like a time warp to the early 2000s, right?
Well, I would say you look you still have that young look. So I can confirm that. But other than that, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on. But let's give everyone a live update. Where are you, Jake? What's going on?
Yeah, so right now I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm the news director at the ABC television station here. I've been here about a year. This was a unique situation because previously this news affiliate, this ABC station, didn't have a local news program. So I came here about a year ago and we started it from the ground up. So yeah, that was quite the challenge. We came in, hired all new staff, all new talent, came up with the direction of which way we want the newscast to go. And like I said, in December, it'll be 1 year of being on air. So it's been a great challenge. It's my second management job since getting off air, which we can talk about later. But yeah, so this is my second job. I've been in management now 3 years, so right here in North Carolina.
And now, is that officially in the South?
You know, it's interesting because I came from Florida and I was thinking like, okay, and, you know, coming from Illinois, anything like the Carolinas is Southern to me. Mm-hmm. But my second week here, there was snow. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Snow? You know, and we're an hour from Virginia. So, you know, there's some Southern culture here, but the weather is pretty similar to Illinois.
So you are from Moline, Illinois. You grew up and went to high school. You're Maroon.
Moline Maroon, yeah.
Moline Maroon. So I always like to kind of start with that, Jake. You know, what was it like growing up in Moline for you? And do you think it had sort of an influence on you personally, professionally?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, one thing that's interesting, you know, Moline is the headquarters of John Deere, which I always think it's kind of a fun tidbit. So it's like when you go to high school, there's like a John Deere wing with, you know, tractors and things like that. But that didn't really rub off on me. When I went to high school, so when I tell this story, so when I was a reporter, you know, news directors would always say, why do you want to be a reporter? You know, that's one of the like most common questions you get asked. Yeah. And at the time I thought this story was kind of cheesy, but it's true. And that, looking back, it's kind of cool. But my aunt worked for WQAD. She was a salesperson at the TV station at the ABC affiliate. So I was a kid, you know, in middle high school, and I'd go in and watch the newscasters do their thing, and you know, they're local celebrities. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And so right away I was just like, wow, how cool is that? Like, you know, and then I got into high school and kind of did the newspaper thing, you know, did the high school newspaper. And I just decided then, like, yeah, journalism, broadcasting, that's what I want to do. And you know, and so then obviously graduate, and you know, I was looking at different colleges in Illinois. And I chose Western for a few different reasons, I remember. So, you know, I went for a college visit and I think they break everyone off, you know, it was like on a Saturday or something. They break everyone off. So I went to Saley Hall and met with Roger and Sharon and you. And I remember thinking, you know, this program, I remember it was just right. It wasn't too big. It wasn't too small, you know, because I was scared I'd get in there and there'd be like, you know, hundreds of kids and like, you know, I'm like, how am I going to shine, you know, with all these people? And, you know, I remember in my group, there was probably like 20 or 30 that was, you know, visiting that day, that were visiting. And everyone seemed so nice and welcoming. And I remember like the other students telling us, like, you will get opportunities, like, you know, not your senior year, you'll get it within your first year or two. I was like, that's, you know, that's super cool. And then obviously the location, you know, Moline to Macomb is less than an hour and a half. So it's like, you know, I could still go home, get a home cooked meal sometime. So yeah, I landed at Western. I kind of toured, you know, Southern and up in Chicago area, and Western, you know, is where I chose. And it was great. Yeah. I mean, it's been all 4 years there, and you know, never look back, and here I am now.
And I think you said your first experience in broadcasting was in the residence hall. Was it WHEN? Were you one of those?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, and I don't know. I'm sure they still don't do this, but and this sounds so antiquated now, but they had the televisions, obviously, and your TVs in your rooms and in the hallways, and they would have like a radio station on the TV. Sounds so old now. And so, but they needed kids to take shifts, and I don't know if it was CDs or MP4s or what we played at the time, but they had a whole catalog of songs, and you just do an hour or two shift, and you can talk a little bit, maybe see the weather. People would call in from their dorm and want to listen to Dave Matthews or I don't know, whatever it was, whatever it was at the time. And I remember my first shift, I'm thinking like, no one's listening to this. And I got a few phone calls. I was like, oh my gosh, people called in, requested some music. And so that was my first, real, I guess, on air, as you want to say, in the dorms there. So.
Yeah, that's fun. That's what's really cool about that is a lot of people got their first start on WHEN and got their feet wet because, some people had the experience of broadcast coming in, but others did not. So, right. It was for some people, you needed to get slowly immersed into what you were doing as you were learning it over that period of time.
Yeah. And like my high school, like you said, we didn't have any type of broadcast. It was just like the newspaper. So yeah, that was my first real experience getting my voice out there, and who knows how many people really were listening, probably like 10, but it was still pretty fun. Yeah.
So another radio related job that kind of came to you was working at WIUM Tri-States Public Radio.
Yeah, that was super cool too. So I remember, I believe it was one of the professors, or maybe I saw just like a posting in the hallway there at St. Lee, and it said they were looking for student reporters, and it was paid.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, that sounds crazy to me. And they sent me, some copy, and they just wanted me to come in and read it, and I didn't think much of it. I think I was a sophomore, junior, and Rich Egger, the news director, and he's still there to this day.
He is.
Called me and said, hey, we like your voice, and we want you to be a student reporter. And and I was out there. I think the assignments were twice a week. So we go in, I think it was like Tuesday, Thursday. There's only two of us, I believe. And I was like, am I just gonna like write things and then you guys read it? And they're like, no, you're going to be on air. I was like, oh, so I'm like, they send me out to, like the school board meetings, and I was, a real reporter basically, and obviously Rich would put a red pin through everything I wrote and said, do it this way, do it that way. But yeah, that was quite the learning experience as well. And like I said, it was paid, which was super cool. But yeah, that was a great experience.
Yeah. And I think what's so beneficial about that, especially for people like you and early on, is you get a real life experience in terms of dealing with public officials, interviewing people, attending meetings, what it's about to be a reporter, those basic skills. And Rich, of course, does such a good job tutoring our students and giving that experience. But, that's a building block, I'm sure, for you when you went out into your profession.
Oh, 100%. And, I always remember this. I remember that I had an interview with the mayor of Macomb, and I can't remember his name, who it was at the time, but I was so nervous. I brought my roommate with me. My roommate wasn't even in broadcasting. I'm like, just come to this meeting with me. Like, okay, like, I guess moral support. And I remember it was one of my first interviews, like with a public official. And I got the mic and my hand was shaking. So I don't know how credible he thought I was with my hand shaking, that nervous. And afterwards, my roommate's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know, I was nervous. But yeah, so, but yeah, it was. I mean, and like I said, I remember Rich was like, yeah, I'm going to give you the assignment, and it goes on air the next day. I'm like, oh, I don't get like a week or two to put this together, So You know, and admittedly, and I did that for 2 years, and admittedly, you know, I'm sure my stories are pretty awful at the time. I'm guessing, you know, when you're starting out, you know, how could they not be? But towards the end, my senior year, I won a Illinois Broadcasters Association award for best feature. So, you know, and that obviously that springboards me to other opportunities after college.
Right. If you weren't any good, Rich would not have had you there. I can tell you that. He's got good high standards, and we appreciate that. One of the other things that I know that you did, Jake, because at the time I was a sports director, and we did, and that's why I have my purple polo on today, is in honor of that. And you were one of our great crew members. What do you remember from doing sports broadcast?
Yeah, you know, that was super cool too. Because yeah, I mean, every Saturday or so we're at the football field. And I remember too thinking like how cool it was, like just the team effort of it all, right? You know, it's like, you know, we've got, I don't know, five or six at least camera folks, and then people in the truck, which I still think is cool, the truck we had, or the production van there. And just how cool it was that we were able to, you know, I remember we kind of huddle beforehand and we have a meeting about kind of shots and what we want. And you just really felt like you were a part of something, you know, and then being able to see it in real time, you know, afterwards was neat. I remember we did the basketball games too, you know, that kind of gave me that really fed my interest of like live production. You know, it's like, there's something about storytelling, going out and interviewing people, but that live production, it's almost like an adrenaline rush. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yeah, like you're a part of the action, you know. And you know, I remember too, like, you know, the director, I don't know, was it you directing or was it someone else? I don't remember.
I think I was always the director. Yeah.
Okay. But you'd be like, hey, you know, camera 4, I need a good crowd shot, get someone excited, you know. So we hype them up. Yeah, it was super fun. It was a good time. And we learned a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we've kind of mentioned in our own conversation before we started here, that period of time was such a special time that you guys, that the class of students and the talent that was on Salee during that period of time was remarkable, because you also were involved with the newscast.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if it was, I feel like that was a kind of, I don't know if it was a rebirth, but I remember like, I think the set was fairly new, like within maybe a year or two. And it just seemed like it was like, we were really getting our stride. And, you know, my co-anchor was Denise Hanitka, who I know you've had on before, and she's now main anchor up at actually where I started out, WQAD. It's funny with Denise. So, you know, of course I see her on social media and whatnot. And my mom is a loyal WQAD fan. And so we'll be at the table when I'm home for holidays or whatever. And she's like, oh, I just love that Denise Hanitka. And I say, you know, I anchored with her at college. I told you the story like 5 times. She's like, oh, I forgot. Yeah, so she's loyal.
She sees her as the celebrity, but not you.
Oh, not me at all. No. Or she'll be like, can't you go back and maybe go anchor with her again? And then Mike Kirkoff, you know, he's up in Milwaukee. I know you've had him on as well. He was our sports guy. Mike at the time too, you know, he was always so witty, you know, come up with like those one-liners. Still does it. I've seen some of his stuff on Facebook. I know he did this thing, this challenge where I think it was a couple of months ago. I don't know if you saw, where he had to go down the slide. He like was trying to break a record by going down this giant slide on the morning show. Yeah, and did it like 100 times. I couldn't do that. But, and Mike, and then gosh, his name is escaping me. Adam something. He was our weather guy. His name just escaped me. But you know, like the four of us, we would get together and we'd have meetings and talk about kind of the tone of the show and the direction of the show. And we're like 20 years old, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, but we took it seriously. And, you know, we wanted to do a great job. And, you know, then Sharon, you know, with the direction of Sharon, she was always running in and out between us and the control room. But we had, I remember our producers took it seriously, the floor crew. I mean, it was legit, you know. I mean, it really felt like you had to be on your A game. And we learned a lot, you know, and that was a good time. That was good memories. But some of those people still stick out. And, I look back, I still have some of my old tapes somewhere. And it is like looking back at like, like my tie was crooked and stuff, but you got the point.
You go back in time and say, hey, young Jake, straighten up that tie, put on a jacket.
Right.
Do these. Yeah, it's always, it's part of the learning process, I think, though. And what I always appreciated during that period of time is there were so many people giving input that was, like you said, Roger Sadler and Sam Edsel were around to help out, which were always helpful. Don Norton. I don't know if you had Don as well, but Don was somebody.
I want to bring up, I actually thought about this last night. There's two things. I only had Don for one class, but there's two things I'll never forget about him. Is he, he would say that it's Western Illinois, not Illinois. And to this day, some of my friends back in Quad Cities will say, yeah, the state of Illinois. And I'm like, it's not Illinois, it's Illinois. So thank you, Don, for that. And this is if you're a news writer, a lot of people want to say, over $100. And he'll say, it's not over $100. It's more than $100. So I still to this day will tell some of my reporters, I'm like, no, it's not over that. It's more than. So thank you, Don.
I'm sure he's going to appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think because somebody else mentioned one time about him saying how he said Chicago.
Oh yeah, no, he was so particular about that. Like, and he was a radio guy, wasn't he?
He was.
Yeah, I remember that. So yeah, we had some great professors.
So Jake, after you got done with WIU, tell us how you got into the industry.
Yeah, so and obviously internships, obviously, they tell you, they really help you out. And so my internship, I did my second semester of the year. I interned at WQAD. And what I remember was so cool about that is, I don't know if you remember this. So Roger Sadler, we kind of do part-time reporting there.
Yep.
So I got to go out with him, and see my professor in action. So that was super cool. I remember that, and obviously, as an intern, you're super nervous because you got these reporters who've been doing it for years, and Roger had too, but I was familiar with Roger. So, he taught me in the classroom, and it was kind of cool to go out in the field with him and actually see how he does it in real life. But yeah, I just, I did my internship and I knew it's what I wanted to do. And I just kept in touch with the news director there. And after I graduated, he said, hey, we've got an editor position, an editor, kind of like a PA studio camera operator. And so right after college, that's what I did. I was editing reporter stories and things like that. And it was, it was neat. It was neat to be in the newsroom every day. And at the time, WQAD, which is about a market, I think it's market 100. Well, it wasn't a starter market, so me being a 22-year-old kid, I'm like, they're not going to put me on air here. But as I kind of showed that, I'd stay late and I'd do all the things he needed to do. I would help out where I could. And the news director, I'd show him my WIU stories. I showed him, or made him, not make him, I had him listen to my NPR stories. And, he said, yeah, you've got definitely the basics of storytelling. And then a part-time weekend reporter job open at WQAD. And so I was editing during the week and then going out on the Saturday, Sunday mornings, turning stories. And, I loved it. And I was like, I'm doing what I want to do in my hometown. But again, there was that stigma back then. This is probably 2006, 2007, where it was really that was a second job for most people. And the news director said, most likely, I'm not going to hire you full time here. You really need to get in the rhythm of doing it 5 days a week before you can come to a market like this. And so I said, okay. So I sent, this is the classic story. I sent 30 VHS tapes, you dub your stories onto a VHS tape with a VCR. And you go to the post office and you send them out. I don't know how much I spent on postage, probably a lot. And I got 2 callbacks. One was down in Columbus, Georgia, and one was up in Traverse City, Michigan. And I remember thinking, chatting with my parents, like, I'd never been in Georgia. It seemed really far away, but Michigan was like a 5-6 hour drive. So I went up there and I took the job. And, you know, it was one of those deals where I wasn't in the main station. So I was a bureau reporter. And little did I know, I was actually the only person in the office. Like, it was me. It was just me. It was like in a bank building. They had like carved out this little, rented some little office. And so I would go every day. I had 3 or 4 counties and make my beat calls, get my little news car with my camera and go out. I mean, it was, you know, it was a sink or swim moment because, again, I didn't have a newsroom to go talk to the main anchor or the executive producer. I mean, maybe on the phone. And, you know, and it's like Illinois, I get it. You guys, you get some snow, you get some cold. Michigan does winter. I mean, it is cold, it is icy. And, you know, I remember there was twice, Buzz, where they're like, all right, we got a blizzard coming. Of course, the weather guy's saying, don't go out on the road, you know, to the viewers, but not to us, of course.
Get Jake out there. We need a shot.
Yeah, we did the shot. You know, so I hit the brakes and I go into a ditch. I hit the ice, go into a ditch. That happened twice to me. And I just remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like I thought I knew what winter was growing up in Illinois. Michigan's a whole different beast. I could tell you that. But, you know, but like I look back and it's like, you know, I had to be self-sufficient. I had to find my own resources. You do what you got to do to get the story on. And at times I remember even kind of being mad at my news director. I'm like, why did he make me a bureau reporter? Like, I wish I could be in the main station. And when I finally left there, he's like, because I knew you could do it. He's like, there's not a lot of people that can take that job.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, that is a compliment, you know, looking back thinking, all right, like, I appreciate that. But yeah, so I did that for about 2 years. And I would describe it as like boot camp, essentially. Like, looking back, it's something you're glad you did, but I never want to do it again. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah. Good description, because it's not very I mean, there's no glamorous part to that.
There wasn't. You know, you're making $23,000 a year, working nights, sometimes weekends. I mean, yeah, but you know, I loved it though. I mean, I was able to meet, you know, the mayor and go to these city hall meetings, and you know, it's what you got in the business for. And you know, I didn't have live capabilities where I was, but every once in a while they'd send a live truck down from Traverse City. So I got to go live a few times. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, you know, it's where I got to do because really, like anything, if you don't do it enough, like in WQAD, I was doing it once or twice a week. You know, doing it 5 days a week, you really get a rhythm and you understand what the job's all about. So I appreciated that. But it was time after 2 years to get out of the snow. That's all I was gonna say, you know.
So where'd you go to next? Because you started the life of a reporter, right?
Yep. So yeah. So next, I was 2 years in Traverse City, Michigan. Actually, Cadillac was the town. It was about 45 minutes south of Traverse City. And then I sent my tapes south. I sprayed the south. I'm like, I need some sunshine. And I got a gig in Pensacola, Florida, at the ABC station there. Totally different from my previous experience. Now I'm at a station, you know, Market 60. You work with a photog every day. You're live every day. It was a #1 station. So, you know, it's like people were calling us constantly with story ideas. It was just such a vastly different operation. That's where I really kind of understood what it's like to, you know, to run and gun and to, you know, we got breaking news, like get in the live van and go. You know, I didn't really have that as a one-man band bureau reporter in Michigan. So yeah, I mean, and I met, you know, and that's to where I finally really got a taste of the business that I thought like the next level, right? So like Florida gets a lot of national stories. We all know the Florida man, right?
Yeah.
And, at the time, the BP oil spill was going on. Huge story, obviously. I remember they were saying, oh, this oil could come on the beach. And I'm thinking, oh, that's, people are talking, but, is that really going to happen? And then one day I'm reporting on the beach and we started seeing tar balls, actual oil coming onto Pensacola Beach, and it ruined their tourism for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a story that we covered for months. And, that's when I covered my first, presidential briefing with Barack Obama. That's still to this day, looking back, like being in the same room with maybe 30 people and the president walks in, and that's only a job. That's only something you can do in journalism for the most part, you know? And then a few months later, I toured the beach with then Vice President Biden. So stuff like that, like I didn't get those type of opportunities in Michigan. I did some CNN live shots as well. So that really felt like I was going to the next level.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Were there any, I'm sure, Jake, there had to be sometimes where, especially around the president, where you're thinking, am I dreaming this? Is this an outer body experience where I'm just imagining that this is going on? Because for you, I mean, that had to be a moment of like, okay, this is real.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting. There were times where, like, that's a great example. So, we're on the beach. They have this area cornered off, and Barack Obama, he's touring the beach, but there's maybe like one press pool, but not all of us. And so I'm sitting on the beach in this cordoned off area, and there's probably, like I said, 20 or 30 of us. And all of a sudden, like kind of out of the corner of my eye, I just see like he just walks up to the podium. He's like, "Hey, everyone, sit down." And he wants to talk to us. And I remember thinking to myself, like, here I am. I'm from Moline, Illinois, sitting on the beach, Pensacola, listening to the president talk 20 feet in front of me. I was just like, wow, how cool is this? Yeah, it was a cool moment. It's still something I still think about to this day, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So what happens after Florida?
Yeah, so, in this business, we live and die on contracts, So I did 2 contracts there. I was there 4 years. I loved it, but I knew that I wanted to kind of play that reporter game, get to the next level. And so it's interesting. I didn't have a ton of bites. And I think this kind of speaks to, this, maybe not only this business, all business. It's kind of a mixture of how talented you are, a little bit of luck, and who you know. And I was wanting to get to a bigger market. And I wasn't getting a lot of bites. And I remember I was in the break room one day getting some coffee, and the general manager of the TV station, his name was Terry Cole, he just strikes up a conversation. And I don't know. I don't know why I did this, but he's asking me how I'm doing. And I said, well, contract's coming up, kind of nervous, and, I've been here 4 years. I love it here, but I kind of want to get to a bigger market. He's like, well, where do you want to go? Well, I don't know. I like Florida and I like the sunshine, but, I'm also from the Midwest, so I wouldn't be opposed to the Midwest. Okay. Didn't think much about it. The next day he goes, hey, news director at NBC in Kansas City is going to call you tomorrow. What? He said, she's a friend of mine. They got a reporter opening. She's going to give you a call. Okay. So she called me, and and like a week later, they flew me up to Kansas City, and they hired me as the night reporter there. And so I went from, Pensacola to Kansas City, which, at the time it was what I needed to, because I wanted to be closer to family as well. Kansas City isn't real close, but it's close enough where you can do a long weekend and drive back to Illinois. So, and that was, I felt super fortunate. And that was, again, kind of every level that I went, it was a new experience and kind of upping my game. So now I'm really covering a city. Pensacola was had some stories, but Kansas City was the hustle and bustle and skyscrapers and professional football teams and baseball teams. And so I did that for 2 years and lived right downtown near the plaza, and that kind of urban living, and it was great. It really taught me how to be a professional. I remember too, the people I was working with at the time had been in the business for a long time. You know, it's one of those markets that not everyone leaves. And my news director at the time, and I'll never forget this, and I sometimes use this now on my people. She'd sent out a memo, an email about something, and I think I was one of the only people not to respond. And she called me into her office and she's like, "Hey, Jake, get my email on whatever topic." And I said, "Yeah, oh yeah, I did." Like, she didn't respond to it. And I said, "I don't know. I didn't think I needed a response. I just kind of figured you knew that I knew," or something like that. She's like, "Here's a little hint. When your boss emails you, respond to it." Fair enough. So I've
Lesson
learned.
learned.
Smart, yeah. And, you know, at the time I was like, "Oh man, she's being so mean," but now I get it when I'm dealing with my own reports.
It's funny how all these things are happening along your career path, and they're adding to and preparing you for eventually the next steps in your career.
Yeah, and that's what it always does, right? The dots kind of connect eventually,
Yeah.
right? So you know, and so I did that for 2 years. I was in Kansas City, and then I took a detour real quick from news, which and that's another thing too. You never know which way you're going. I met our HR lady in Kansas City. You know, we'd sit there. You know, I talked a lot in the break room over coffee with people. So we were chatting, and she got promoted to the head of HR for Scripps Broadcasting. And so she was about to move, and we were chatting, and she said, "You know," and she asked me what I was doing, because my contract's coming up.
Yeah.
And I said, "I don't know what I want to do. I've been a reporter now 8-9 years." And she said, "Well, what do you think about entertainment?" Well, I haven't really, thought about entertainment, to be honest with you. And she said, "A company's launching as a national show that'll air on all of our 15 affiliates, kind of like an Inside Edition almost, but maybe not with all as much gossip drama. And we're going to have reporters in some satellite offices throughout the country, and you'll kind of travel a little bit throughout whatever location you're in, and you'll do fun stories." And I don't know, that's fun actually. Let's maybe give it a try. So I applied for it and interviewed with the managers, and they said, "Okay, you've got some personality we can see." And I didn't think I'd get the job because I'm covering murders and fires, but they saw something, and they said, "Okay, you can go to Phoenix, Arizona, or Tampa, Florida." Those aren't two bad choices.
Yeah.
But I knew Florida, and so I went down to Tampa, Florida. So did that for a couple of years, and that was a whole different thing. It's like I had a photographer, I had a field producer. We're going to, the Harry Potter experience at Universal, when they opened that, we were there covering it, and first on the Hogwarts Express, and things like that, and restaurant openings, and making food with world-renowned chefs. So it was a whole different kind of, it's like meeting the president and all that was super cool, but then also like meeting these other people, that are, are second to none in their industry was really neat too.
Yeah.
So that took me back to Florida, and I did that. And like I said, it was kind of a good break from news too. I kind of like not having to go to the crime scene every day, just to get a little break from it. And then they syndicated the show and decided that they didn't need the satellite offices anymore. So I was unemployed.
Well, was that the motivation to get into management, to go into a completely different direction?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. So, being in a show like that, I'm working with a team, and we're deciding, like when you are a general assignment reporter for a newscast, you have kind of control over your 1 minute, 30-second story. That's about it. And we had a lot more creative control of what we wanted our product to look like. And I just thought, this is super neat being able to do that, and talk to some of my mentors. And one of them, who, how the dots connect, was my old producer in Pensacola, was now a news director. He said, my company has a news director opening in Gainesville, Florida. And, it's a small market. So since you don't have as much management experience, they might consider you for it. Okay, let's give it a try. And I applied for it, and I got it. Yeah, I couldn't believe it too. I remember when the general manager called me, we want to offer you the news director position. And I was like, that sounds weird saying my name.
Yeah. They're going to let me tell other people what to do?
Right. And I remember I walked in the first day, and it was a small station, 4 or 5 reporters. And, they're right out of college, and they look at me and they're just kind of like, what do we do today? Like, oh yeah, that's my job, right?
Yeah.
So I did that for a year and a half, and then that's when the company said, hey, you did a great job in Gainesville. What do you think about launching this news product in Greensboro? And so here I am. So it's kind of went from the news side to the entertainment side to now management. It's been quite the journey. Not gonna lie.
And one thing that I hope our students learn from this, Jake, is that a couple points. First of all, that, the industry does depend upon the connections that you make. And many times along your journey, you were making good connections and proving yourself. The other thing that I really listened to and observed is that you talked about having mentors and having people provide that sort of feedback to you over and over again along your journey so that you know where you are.
Yeah. And, and I appreciate that, because it's like the same journey, the same mistakes, people have already made them, and people have already been on that journey. It might be a little different journey, but people have been down the road before. I think and I tell even my reporters here, I say, if it's not me, maybe an anchor in a market and who's been there 10 years or so. Having a mentor to bounce off ideas, because like I said, a lot of the story's the same to a certain degree. We've all jumped around, we've all made poor money, we've all, is this the right job for us? So it's super important to always establish a mentor, and they've really helped me along the way.
Now, certainly over the time period that you've been in the business, there have been changes within news. So I always like to kind of think of what's the joy, what's the challenge of producing news these days?
Well, obviously the one thing is it's not like new. I mean, social media and digital. So it's interesting. When I was in Pensacola, Facebook they hadn't just rolled out, but it was fairly new, maybe a year or two old. And at the time, the company thought it was a distraction. So it blocked you. The company server blocked you from Facebook, right? Now, I have to get people in trouble if they don't go on Facebook and post enough, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
So it's interesting how that has evolved. But, it's interesting though, because we get news, back in the day, I actually literally, I told you I had to do beat calls. I'm calling 20 people, different police departments, the mayor, things like that. The information is so free flowing now. That's one great thing about it. But so you're hearing in real time now what's happening in your communities. But the challenge is, there's a lot of noise out there too that you got to filter through. So that's one thing. You got to, as a journalist, you got to know what's legit, and you have many deadlines. So it's like, back in the day, you only had a 5 or maybe a 6 o'clock deadline. I want my people tweeting every other hour or so, so you're constantly connected as a reporter. And, if you hear an update, it's kind of like you're working on your story throughout the day, as far as, obviously at 5 or 6, you've got the full package, but every little nugget you get along the way, the public wants to know. So you're showing your homework essentially. And you're tweeting that out on social media. So it's definitely a much more interactive experience now as being a reporter. When I started the first 5 years, it's like you get your assignment, you don't talk to the viewers till 8 hours later, and now you're connected all the time. I think that's one of the biggest things. And again, it's somewhat of a blessing and a curse, depends on how you look at it. But it is nice that you don't have to make those 20 beat calls in the morning. Even though you still should sometimes, because you want to be able to connect, make those relationships with people. But yeah, I would say those are some of the challenges.
So now that you've been in the business for 15 years and a young person comes in, what kind of things do you notice that they are lacking as a young person, a young journalist?
Well, I think the thing that I've noticed with some of my people, maybe not here, but some of the previous stations, especially the ones that are just right out of college, I think there is that reliance on digital, whereas before the chief of police would text me because I took the time to call him all the time and bug him. How's your wife doing? Things like that. If you're just getting text updates and tweets from the police department, you're not really building that rapport.
Yeah.
And it's hard for them to ever want to give you any insider information if they don't really know you besides maybe streaming. So I think there is that one-on-one building of relationships that's somewhat going away. And, I tell my people, I'm like, hey, there's nothing wrong if you don't have a story set up in the morning. Ask the chief or ask the fire chief or ask the superintendent, hey, do you have time for coffee? Because that's how they're going to remember you, So I think it's that, it's that building of connections, that one-on-one connections that I think has definitely strayed a little bit. That's kind of what I've been seeing.
Well, I think you're right. I think that's part of learning to tell somebody's story is learning to know them a little bit personally as well.
Yeah. Sure.
So, Jake, we always like to end with any other recommendations you might have for our students, things that they might be clued in on.
Yeah, I think, one thing, and I don't know if this is cliche or not, but be flexible. For me, I got into this business, and I'm sure everyone does. They have their own reason. I wanted to anchor world news, or maybe you want to anchor Sports Center. But there will be paths that you never thought that you'd ever see that will come to you. I never thought I'd be in entertainment. I never thought I'd be in management. But the doors open, and your mentors and people you work with present you with opportunities. So be open to that. And I also think too, just a side note, producing, it's not always, it seems as glamorous because you're not on air, but there are tons of opportunities and always will be for television producers. You can move up faster, you get to a bigger market faster, I'd say, on the producing side. And also just be willing to do whatever it takes. When I was at WQAD making nothing or interning, I would spend 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day sometimes, because I wanted to be noticed. So you just got to do what it takes to get noticed and be flexible. That's kind of my advice to the young folks out there.
Well, Jake, it's been so great catching up with you, man. I tell you, hopefully you haven't been back to Macomb in a while, but hopefully you can come back and maybe even see the old our sports setup today.
I'd love it. Yeah, no, it could be fun. Maybe you can put me on a camera for a little bit
and put you on the sidelines. And thanks to all of our weekly viewers out there. If you're interested in being on the show or want to recommend somebody, just send me an email. We like to hear from our alums, and we want you to continue to watch, listen to the podcast, and we generally just appreciate your support. So until next week, stay safe, take care, and God bless.